Hi everybody, I'm Dave Lewis. I'm the Regional Training Director for Dallas Destination Imagination, coming to you from the facilities of Christar by their great generosity. A shout out to them. And this is another part of our ongoing series, What Appraisers Wish Team Managers Knew. Now, today we're going to be talking about story basics. Now, this has been something that technically, the appraisers do ask me about this, and yet even more team managers say, what is this beginning, middle, and end thing? It always, all the challenges keep saying a story has to have a beginning, middle, and an end. What does that mean? And I'll admit it is kind of unclear when you put it that way. There are reasons that I won't go into why they write the requirement that way, but just bear in mind that we could sum up the entire Wizard of Oz story in 3 words. Dorothy returned home. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Dorothy, being the characters, returned being how she deals with a conflict, and home being the conclusion. Yeah, all right. So let's start out by fleshing out those 3 terms that are going to be sequence, structure, and scale. I've already started talking about Dorothy returning home. Your sequence always starts out with the characters. I'm going to alliterate again. Always starts out with the characters, introduces them, then it proceeds into a conflict. The conflict usually includes a failure. Why do you have a failure early in the story? So that you know that failure is a possibility. It builds drama later on in the conflict. Then you have, then you reach a crisis point, and you go on to a conclusion. This is the way that all of us are wired to listen for stories. We need to be told this is how, and that things are going to be all right, or that we will at least be sadder but wiser. That's the sequence of it. Now, what about structure? People say, well, what's structure? I thought we were getting into the fine arts challenge here, and now you're talking about structure again. Have you ever met anyone who couldn't tell a joke? Usually, someone who can't tell a joke is having problems with the structure of the joke. They start out telling you 2 of the 3 characters involved, and then they start running into misstating who it was that said what, and then they drag the third character in later on, too late to make a difference in the joke, and then they include the punchline into the setup line. It's usually a sequencing problem, but that's the structure of a story, that you always have characters who set up something, usually involving a word with multiple meanings, and a misunderstanding, and then what makes you laugh is the the knowledge that it's a funny old world after all. So now that you understand sequence and structure, there's one other thing that makes a story emotionally satisfying, and that is scale. What do you mean scale? Well, how many times have you ever heard stories about if I had only changed that one little thing, things would have been way different. If I hadn't noticed that the little girl in the corner was crying, then I might have missed out on a great opportunity. Usually large events turning on small decisions. Where shall we go tonight? Well, let's toss a coin. A butterfly moves its wings, and later on there's a big hurricane somewhere. But the opposite can be used too, where you've got Humphrey Bogart in the middle of a war, and he says, my personal problems don't amount to a hill of beans against this monumental struggle that involves all of humanity and is going to decide epic decisions. It's going to deal with a lot of these things. That's what scale is. You need to manipulate scale. I say you need to. it's good to. Questions of priority are always coming up. What's more important, family or truth? What's more important, loyalty or love? What's more important, blood or water? What's more important? You get the idea. So now that we've talked about scale, we come to the question of how do you go about writing a story? Well, now here there are any number of ways that a story can be written, and none of them that I know of are wrong. You can start with the message. You can start with a plot device. You can start with a prop. You can start with a character. You can start at the beginning and move forward. You can start at the end and backfill the story. You can start in the middle and work your way out. I don't know if you could write a story sideways. That might be interesting to try, but that's probably another discussion for another day. So the two ways that I've seen teams effectively write stories has been one that they start with the props, they start with the solution, they build a story out from that. A team will have a slogan that you start hearing meeting after meeting. I had a team that every time they walked in, they had some story about what they were dealing with in their lives, and this is something that they write of which they know. And they were saying the more things change, the more they stay the same. They wound up writing a story about archaeologists and the people who had occupied the dig that they were digging up, and they did role reversals and found out that the same people, even in different circumstances, even in different social standings, wound up being the same people. Nice, satisfying story. They went quite a ways with that one. The other way, and this is pretty fascinating, is to make up characters and internalize that. This happens a lot more in improv challenges than anything else. But each team will sit down and work out what kind of characters they feel like they would be. Well, I'm not going to be a mad scientist. I'm just going to be an irritable one. I'm going to be the crazy cookie lady that goes around and gives out cookies to everybody and thinks that will solve everything. I'm going to be the spoiled princess. I'm going to be the con artist that's always ripping people off and scamming them. And they work out those characters that kind of internalize it, and then they walk through on the space that's designated. They walk through and say, all right, and if I did this, then how would you react to that? What would you be thinking? What would you be feeling? All right, and we'll write all that down. And of course, the only logical way to proceed is for you to move forward and say, no, that's not going to work. I'm going to oppose you. Here's our conflict, and you're going to lose first because I knew this was coming. And we write these things down, and each time they move, they stop and say, okay, where am I? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? That's pretty much a remarkable way to do it, and it wound up being a great story. I saw a team that they were fighting, they were arguing, and we went through some brainstorming sessions, took all the stuff that they had done, set it aside, started over, and lo and behold, we wound up with a story where they're going to the irritable scientist next door and want to borrow a cup of electricity. And he says, well, electricity doesn't come in cups. And they said, well, how about a liter then? 8-year-old humor, you just got to love it. So the thing is that I describe all these different methods, and your team is probably going to zigzag between those methods. Don't panic, because they will get there, and you're going to be happy with the result.